right. How's everyone doing tonight? We are the Tripwire podcast. We're part of the Triple Play Fantasy family. My name is Zach. Tonight I'm joined by Tobe. And then for his Tripwire debut, we have Alex. And Alex, can you tell everyone a little bit about yourself since it's your first time on the show?
Zach, Tobe. Good to be a part of the squad now. You can find me on Twitter at AlexMateo94. Previously, you were able to find some of my written content with Ball Blast Football. Be sure to check out that draft guide we just put out there. But moving forward, whether it's podcast, written, anything like that, it'll be exclusively with Triple Play.
Awesome. Well, welcome. We're glad to have you. And we have another exciting episode tonight. So the Tripwire podcast is going to stream every Monday night around 8 p.m. Eastern. It'll be on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. So far this offseason, we've been talking about sleepers for every position. So episode 1 was QBs, episode 2 was running backs, and episode 3 was wide receivers. And then once we get the season started in a couple more weeks in September, we're going to be talking exclusively waiver wire pickups every Monday right before Monday Night Football. So we'll get you ready for your waiver wire before Monday Night Football even kicks off. And then you can even check us out on Tuesday if you miss us live and get yourself set up for the waivers. Because as they say, you don't win your league at the draft. It is about making the right moves on the waiver wire that wins you championships. And we are here to help you win championships. So this episode, we're going to be talking about tight end sleepers. So we're just going to share a couple different tight ends, talk about them. All of these tight ends are being drafted late. They're all sleepers. And these are coming from Fantasy Pros ADP. The big thing about tight ends, I think this episode might actually be the most helpful that we've had from all the positions of what's going to actually impact your team. Because we were talking about QB2s, we were talking about running back 40s, wide receiver 40s and 50s, which are great, but the odds of you hitting on them, not so great. But these tight ends are going late just because we've really pushed the position down. So there's a good chance that one of these tight ends could be a league winner for you. I mean, a couple years ago, Darren Waller would have been on this list. George Kittle would have been on this list before he broke out. So this is where you really can take a chance on a tight end. So I don't know about – I'll let the other guys say how they feel about tight ends. But for me this year, if you don't get one of those big 3, maybe 4, for me, I'd rather just wait on the position and grab somebody near the end of my draft, round 12, 13, 14, wherever you are in the draft. And that's where I'm looking at one of these tight ends. How do you guys feel about that strategy?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you there, Zach. Everyone knows the big 3, Kelsey, Waller, Kittle, in that order for me. Then 4 through 6, you can argue any combination between Hawk, Mark Andrews, and Kyle Pitts. But even if you get one of those 3, I would still go for a second tight end late. If not, I'm just completely punting the position and just banking on athletic upside.
And I'm in agreement with both of y'all. Past the big 3, I usually just wait. I haven't drafted much of your Fants, Goddards, Gesicki's because I will take a Hawk, Andrews, or Pitts in that 5th through 7th just because I like the value there. But even if those guys get overdrafted, I'll wait till some of the guys we're talking about tonight just because you can see that upside and value play out more than like a Fant or a Gesicki where he might have a safe floor, but he's not going to push that upside.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, with most of these tight ends, you're just hoping for a touchdown that week.
Yeah, right now it's just tight end upside what we're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to QBs. If you're streaming QBs, you're basically streaming tight ends of who's got a good matchup, who's been hot recently that you can grab off the waiver wire, which will be perfect for you guys during the season. But yeah, for me, you're just hoping to get lucky. Out of the first handful of guys, the targets just aren't there for most of these guys, and that's why they're being ranked as low as they are, and that's why you're taking them as sleepers. So for the first one, why don't we start with Alex? Who did you want to talk about?
All right, so I'm going to start with Dalton Schultz, the tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. As an Eagles fan, it pains me to once again pump up a Cowboys player, but here we are. In 2020, Schultz finished as the tight end 11. And going back to what you said, targets is a big thing. He finished 9th in targets with 89, was 5th in receptions with 63, but he didn't leave the field. He had the 3rd highest snap share at 88.9%, with 30% of those coming from the slot. And from week 4 on, he saw at least 75%. So he was on the field early and often, even with the train wreck at QB he still had his fair share with the big three receivers there, dealing with CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, and Michael Gallup. Schultz still had his share. Now, Schultz is one of those.
I do have a question. Does Blake Jarwin hinder the Dalton Schultz stock?
He hinders the floor to an extent, just for the fact that it's highly unlikely that 5 pass catchers are going to be extremely viable. But at this point,
do you think it'll be like a 50-50, or do you think Schultz gets more of the like 70-30, 60-40?
I think it'll be closer to a 60-40 split to start. There's a chance it could creep up to 50-50, but just for the fact that Jarwin is coming off of that season-long injury and Schultz has no injury track record. I don't even think he's missed a single game in his 3 years in the league.
Okay. That's the only question I had there, because Jarwin seems to be being drafted more often than Schultz at this point. And I like the Schultz pick because it's somebody no one's talking about, and we don't know how fast Jarwin's going to get into playing shape and coming up to speed. So Schultz is still going to have a role, and like you said, he still had a role predominantly with those big three receivers that we talk about all the time.
And that's like the other thing with Schultz and my other sleeper. It's one of those, you're drafting them late. You're not expecting them to consistently see your lineup. But if it's one of those, he's your second or third tight end and you have a bye week, he's someone you can confidently slide in there and be assured that he'll at least not put up a 0 for you.
I mean, as a Cowboys fan, I can't be upset about Schultz. But for me, it's tough just with that many offensive weapons for Dak to target. I think Schultz is one of those. If you like him, that's great. Draft. You can literally get him with your last pick, and then let's see what happens week 1, week 2, and then if he doesn't really get the targets and it's all Jarwin, you just drop him. It doesn't hurt you. So I don't think there's anything wrong with grabbing Schultz at the end of your draft if he's someone you're speculating on.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing. It's not like you're spending like a 5th, 6th round draft pick on your probably 15th, 16th, 17th round draft pick. Anything earlier, you can be like, whoa, what are you doing there? Exactly. But at the same time, the fact that tight end room is so ambiguous, like you said, it's all speculation. Who's really going to take that step? We just know that Schultz does have a season of production under his belt.
And when you look at it before Jarwin got hurt, him and Dak had a rapport in the red zone, and Dak looks to the tight end because it's the position you don't think that's predominant on that team. So Schultz could get that rapport with Dak early in the season. You can see some early touchdowns from Schultz.
Definitely.
I'll go into my next guy. Mine's not so far down the list as Schultz, but it's Jonnu Smith, the new tight end for the New England Patriots. He got his money this offseason, and his ADP right now is tight end 15, and it's early 14th round, which after watching preseason, I feel like it's going to climb up a little bit because he is an explosive athlete. He's got the speed, the size, and we saw what he did last year in Tennessee. He scored 8 touchdowns early on. He kind of fizzled out last season. That's why people weren't really talking about him, because his production kind of lacked towards the end. But we saw not too long ago Cam Newton love Greg Olsen in Carolina. And I know Jonnu and Greg Olsen don't have the same like speed skill set, but Cam wants to target the tight end, and that's why you saw him brought in too, Jonnu and Hunter Henry. And to me, I think he's going to be the red zone favorite for Cam Newton down there when they get inside the 20. I think he's going to look Jonnu's way more often than not, just because of the size advantage he has on a linebacker safety going down there. And he can also, we see it in Kansas City with Kelsey on the little flip pass in the red zone. I think you could see some more rushing opportunities out of him too on end arounds and stuff like that. But I think his ADP is going to rise from where it is right now.
Yeah, I think with Hunter Henry getting banged up with his shoulder out for a few weeks. I mean, I think Jonnu's actually banged up right now too with, I think it was an ankle. So it wouldn't shock me if his ADP kind of creeps up a little bit. But it's one of those things where he's on a new team, so that makes you hesitate. But then they paid him a lot of money. That's great. But then they added Hunter Henry for similar money. And then we don't know who the quarterback is. So I can see why his ADP is so low. But it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out with that offense. Because, I mean, we keep hearing camp reports that Cam looks good, Cam looks bad. everyone was freaking out about Mac Jones in the first week, but it's the first week of preseason, so we'll see how that all shakes out. But he definitely has an athletic profile that you definitely want to target this late. And he had a lot of great red zone end around plays in Tennessee, and it looks like based on a brief video that we saw in training camp that they might have a similar package for him this year. So definitely not a bad target to go this late when you're trying to chase that upside.
And I think the ambiguous QB room actually helps guys like Jonnu and Hunter Henry. Newton, like Toby said, does enjoy to target the tight end.
Mm-hmm.
Cam Newton's good. They get targets. That's great for them. Cam Newton sucks. They go to Mac Jones, rookie QB, going to keep his eyes straight ahead, hit the tight ends a little more. So it's
going to be a safety blanket.
Both of those guys, yeah.
And we saw, even talking about the quarterback Mac Jones in his first preseason game, he didn't really try to chunk the ball downfield, and that's what we knew he could throw intermediate short because he did it at Alabama, but Alabama made him throw down the field. And now I think Belichick's in a more conservative with Mac Jones to see what he has to be able to read, and that's with the tight ends that they brought in. So even if they switch to Mac coming off of Cam, if Cam's not doing too well, I still don't think. I think it might actually improve the stock of the two Patriots tight ends.
I think that can help all the pass catchers.
Yeah, because he's not going to run as much as Cam.
Yeah, and let's be honest, it's not like the wide receivers there are anything amazing. I don't care
what don't hate on Jacoby
reporters
Myers.
are saying about. Yeah,
do not hate on Jacoby Myers.
I'm not hating on him, but I'm not saying he's a wide I'm just saying. I mean, I could easily see Jonnu and Henry being the first two targets for that.
I think
that's what you're looking for with a tight end.
Yeah.
Is who's going to get the target. So I mean, this late, athletic, might get a lot of targets. Why not take a shot?
Who's your first sleeper, Zach?
So my first one is going to be. He's been kind of hot, kind of cold, depending on what day of the week it is. It's going to be Adam Troutman of New Orleans Saints. So right now his ADP is, tight end 19, late 16th round. So for most leagues, he might not even be drafted, depending on how deep you're playing. But he's got a lot of buzz just because Michael Thomas is hurt for who knows how long. Is he going to get traded? We don't know. And then you have Traquan Smith is also hurt right now. So looks like Marquez Callaway is going to be their top wide receiver right now. We don't know what he's going to do. So a lot of people have been talking about Troutman. He's got a great profile. He didn't do much last year. So as much as everyone's been hyping him up this summer, he barely played last year. He kind of came on towards the end finally with 16 targets for the entire season. Now he caught 15 of the 16, which is great. And he averaged over 11 yards of reception, but that's such a small sample size. You can't really extrapolate anything from that.
No.
It's more just, hey, this late, I just think he's a great dart throw where he just might be a target monster. He might not be, but he has that potential. And that offense, we're hoping, will still function without Drew Brees. But, I mean, after Kamara, I don't know who they're going to throw the ball to, so why not make your last pick on Troutman and see what happens.
Troutman's kind of like an opportunity play because Cook's no longer there, Josh Hill's no longer there, so he's the starter and he's going to funnel in at least a share of the targets that Cook and Hill got last year. And with no Michael Thomas for we don't know how long because Michael Thomas doesn't even like to get surgery when he needs it. So, and then we haven't seen Traquan Smith or Marquez Callaway be the number one and be forced into the role like that. You could see more targets funneled to Adam Troutman because he looks like he can get open with 15 catches last year, 11.4 yards per reception. I think he can get open.
Yeah, and that offense is it could be really bad. It can be very reminiscent to what people think Detroit's going to be this year.
It could go either way.
You got an elite running back, a tight end who could potentially see 100 targets, and us three is their top receivers.
Yeah.
Like,
but it also wouldn't shock me if
that much perceived competition at all.
Oh yeah, and it wouldn't shock me if Peyton just put something together with whoever the QB is, where he just works his magic with Kamara. You got Troutman down the middle, and then let's be honest, the wide receivers they haven't done much, but they're all pretty fast. So I mean, hopefully they can at least keep the defense honest. I've seen a couple different arguments going back and forth on Twitter with Troutman. He's a great blocker as well, so he's on the field a lot, which you like to see. But then some argue, well, he's on the field, but he's just blocking. He's not going out for routes. So, I mean, that was last year. You already had Jared Cook on the field going out for routes. So I'm really interested to see if now that he's really the tight end one on that team, yeah, he's going to be on there blocking a lot, but so does George Kittle. I mean, he's considered one of the best blocking tight ends. Now, I'm not saying Troutman is George Kittle at all, but I'm just saying that I don't think it's a bad thing that he's a good blocker and he's going to be on the field a lot, and that just gives him more opportunities to get a target.
No, but he could be a George Kittle. We don't know yet.
Well, yeah, I'm not comparing him. I just don't want to tell everyone he's George Kittle.
Yeah.
Let's lower the expectations.
No, I think Troutman is going to be what fantasy gamers hoped Dallas Goedert was last year. He's going to take that role. He's going to finish like 80 to 90 targets, going to finish in that 600 to 700 range in yards, and probably have like 6 or 7 scores, with most of them coming within that 5-yard line range. And he's going to put up a couple booms weeks, going to have some really low ones, and he's probably going to end up averaging about like 9.5, 10 points per game, which is what you want from your tight end position, especially from, say, a 16th round pick. That's more than we're going to get out of anyone else you take in that round.
Yeah, I like the comparison to Goddard last year, but we were so hyped. Everybody was so hyped on Goddard last year that it pushed his ADP up
way up
past the value, and you kind of felt disappointed. And I don't think Troutman is going to push that high just because we don't know the situation in the offense and what it looks like with the 2 QBs, because we don't know who's going to favor Troutman more, Winston or Hill, and we won't know that until week 1, who's the starter, and after we see it. So that's why he's going to stay buried in ADP, and that's why he's a good value.
Yeah.
All right, so when we were figuring out which tight ends we want to talk about, I was not expecting to see this name, but I'm all for discussing him. So, Alex, who is your next tight end sleeper?
All right, so probably doesn't even have an actual ADP right now.
He does not.
He does not.
So, Tyler Conklin from the Minnesota Vikings. Now, I know what everyone's saying. Who? But going to go smaller sample size. It's 4-game sample size. Weeks 14 through 17. There's no Kyle Rudolph. Really going to discount a little bit week 14 because that was Irv Smith coming back from an injury. So the last 3 weeks, big ones, week 15 through 17. Irv Smith played an average of 83% of the snaps, while Conklin was at 74%. They both averaged 5 targets a game, 3 receptions a game, and Conklin actually averaged 3 more yards a game. Now, I know it's not a world beater, but this whole expectation of Irv Smith is going to end up finishing top 10 this year, got to temper those expectations. Minnesota likes to run a lot of 12 personnel, especially with the fact they really only have 2 solid receivers. Amir Ishmarsett could be relevant, but who knows? But Zimmer in the past has shown that he's going to keep 2 tight ends on the field. And similar to Schultz, going for an ambiguous tight end room. Not going to pick a guy who doesn't realistically have top 5 upside. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying take Tyler Conklin in the 10th round. But after week 1 or 2, he could have a decent bit of targets. He can outplay Irv Smith, and he'd be a guy you're targeting on the waiver wire.
You know, I had to do a little research for an article for Irv Smith talking about this year he breaks out. I'm more thinking maybe next year. But one of the things that shocked me, because I was like, oh, Kyle Rudolph was out. Let's see how he did. Minnesota Vikings, if they weren't number 1, they had to be top 3 in having 2 tight ends on the field at a time against the NFL. And like you said, Conklin was right up there with the same snap percentage. Sometimes he even outsnapped Irv Smith. So it would not shock me at all to see Conklin out target Irv Smith. Or let's be honest, I mean, injuries happen. Not that we're predicting injuries or hoping for injuries. But I mean, we've talked about this whole episode. Conklin's one of those guys. He's literally your last pick. Or you don't have to pick him. You can wait a couple of weeks
you can wait.
And then pick him up for free because no one's even going to notice him on the waiver unless he goes off in the first 2 weeks. But I don't think people realize as they're hyping up Irv Smith just how much Conklin was on the field at the end of the season. So I'm glad you brought that up.
And that's one thing I do need to reiterate. I'm not saying take Tyler Conklin, take Dalton Schultz in the 11th round. He's going to be a top 5 tight end. But you're looking for guys who have chances to not put up zeros if they see your lineup.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what both of them can do. In the last 4 weeks, Conklin saw 5, 4, 6, and 6 targets and played almost 60. He played 58% week 14, and then every other week he was at least 65%. So when he was called upon, Zimmer kept him on the field, and all camp, whenever they would ask him about the tight end room, he would immediately go right to Tyler Conklin. When there's smoke, there's fire. It's one of those week 1 you'll be able to tell if he's not on the field, drop him. Doesn't hurt at all.
Yep.
And the way they run their offense in the zone run scheme and coming off a lot of play action for Kirk Cousins, those 2 tight ends are going to stay on the field predominantly because Irv Smith is not – he doesn't grade out as a great pass run blocker. So that's why Tyler Conklin sees a lot of the snap percentages, and that's why Tyler Conklin is probably going to see some targets as well. Like you said, the 6, 6, 5, and maybe this year it can be more of the 6 to 8 because Kyle Rudolph's not there either. So in the early season when it was Kyle Rudolph and Irv Smith, you'd see Irv Smith come in there for 2 tight end sets, but they'd run a play action and not run block. If you watched, Tyler Conklin would be coming there if they were running the ball, and then every so often he'd be in there for a play action so it doesn't look predominantly like they're just running the ball when he comes in. And this year they have no choice. He's got to be in there all the time they run 2 tight ends. So
and that's the
sneaky
thing too. When it was Irv's rookie year, it was a 50-50 split, him and Rudolph. When it was Irv and Rudolph this year, it was a 50-50 split. When it was Irv and Conklin, it was still a 50-50. There's even less competition for pass catchers now in Minnesota. What makes anyone think it's not going to be close to a 50-50 split again? If it walks like a duck, if it flies like a duck, if it flies like a duck, it's a duck. Minnesota's going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets, and Conklin's going to be on the field a lot.
That's fair. All right,
and
Toby.
We'll go into my second guy, and it's Gerald Everett from Seattle. He signed a 1-year contract, nothing big. He's going in the mid-16th round, and I think this might creep up a little bit because we've seen Russell Wilson give us tight ends like Will Dissly and Jacob Hollister and made them look good for a stretch of games. And the new offensive coordinator that's coming in, Shane Waldron, his offensive scheme is similar to one of Sean McVay's, where Everett came from in Los Angeles. And so it's a lot of zone scheme, play action, and you run 2 tight ends. And Russell Wilson loves the tight end in the red zone as well. And we can see a big touchdown jump. And also in LA, Everett ran the end arounds for them from the tight end position. So we can see that as well. And I honestly think he's going too low right now. I don't know about y'all, but I feel like he can middle from tight end 8 to 10 easily, barring health.
Yeah, I mean, he easily could be the number 3 for targets there behind DK and behind Lockett. Like you said, now there are some other tight ends there, and they love to run their tight ends. But
Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, he's their best and has the best athletic profile.
Yeah.
So he's definitely one of those guys where it's not going to cost you much in a draft. Why not take a shot and see how he works out for that team? Because he flashed a lot with the Rams, and now
he has that big playability. He's kind of like Jono. He's got that big playability to just shoot up the seam and take it to the house.
Right. That's
what you kind of look for. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing, Waldron was Everett's tight end coach for the first 3 years with the Rams. He had a big influence on the Rams even making that pick. He basically handpicked him to come with him to Seattle. All these changes, like you guys said, it's going to indicate they're going to be throwing the ball more in Seattle. Russ had a phenomenal – when he had Jimmy Graham as his tight end, Jimmy Graham went bananas. Granted, they didn't have a DK on the outside, but you can really make an argument for Everett to be this year's tight end who slides into that top 10.
Yep.
I put money on that one.
I'm gonna get to my last one because we have a couple questions from the audience at the end here. So this guy is actually probably one of the earlier tight ends we've talked about. Not the
I
earliest, but
can't
one of the
stand
earlier
this
ones.
guy.
So a lot of people don't like him, but I'm gonna talk about him. It's Evan Ingram of the New York Giants. So he's currently tight end 16, going in the early 15th round. So he's gotten a lot of hate recently. He had a lot of drops last year, made a lot of mistakes. I know our friend Steffi Smalls out there hates him, and she loves the Giants. So I know it's a sensitive subject.
That's telling you something right there. That's
I get it, and I don't love him myself, but at that price, in the end of your draft, we've seen him be a target monster. We have no idea how healthy Galladay is going to be. We don't know how healthy Barkley is going to be. Ingram could get nothing, and you could drop him after a week or two. But I mean, we saw him as rookie. He had one of the best rookie tight end years, and we're talking about now Kyle Pitts, and everyone thinks he's going to be Kyle Pitts is going to be better than him. He could be, but Ingram was the last rookie tight end that had a big year. So we've seen him do it. He's capable when he holds onto the ball. He's not going to block for you. So if he's on the field, he's going out for a route. So at least he's giving himself some kind of opportunity. Like I said, I'm not saying this is a guy you need to reach for. By all means, let him fall to you. But he definitely has the potential to end up coming back into one of those top half of the tight ends that everyone's just kind of sleeping on because they just have that sour taste in their mouth from last year.
Is Kyle Rudolph in New York?
Yes.
He is.
I think we're going to see a 50-50 between both of them.
We could, but Kyle hasn't done much in a few years either.
Yeah, so he's old, but he can block. Evan Ingram cannot.
Put both of them on
the one positive I'd say about Evan Ingram is he is one of those guys that can see a huge target volume because Kenny Galladay hasn't been the beacon of health in his career, and Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard have looked good at times, but they haven't been able to carry that Giants offense. And it's mainly Evan Ingram earned his ADP by his play, but his ADP is also getting suffocated a little bit because we saw Daniel Jones throw 11 touchdowns last season. That's not good. That's not going to make anybody look good on that team. Nope. So until he shows us something, the rest of these Giants players, besides Saquon Barkley, are going to be pushed down to an extent because we don't know what that offense is going to show us. We don't know if Daniel Jones is going to grow a pair and actually play quarterback or if he's going to continue fumbling after 76 yards without being touched.
Yeah. So we got a question from the audience. So this has nothing to do with tight end sleepers, but it does kind of have to do with our show. So I wanted to get it in there at the end here. So I'm going to put up on the screen. So this guy's looking for advice. So his opponent for week 1, for some reason, dropped Jamar Chase for Keelan Cole. And so how much fab would you guys bid in a redraft league? So for me, if you want him, you're going to probably have to bid all of your fab. But if you aren't sure about him, I mean, at least 75% of your fab.
75% was the first thing that came to my mind.
Yeah, because I know it's tough to give up everything right now. And, I mean, based on him being out for a year, that offense apparently looking shaky in training camp, it wouldn't shock me if Chase kind of is slow the first few weeks, and then I could see him being a huge – I mean, look at Justin Jefferson. A lot of people dropped him after week 2 or 3, and then he blew up and had a record rookie year. So – Chase has that potential. So it wouldn't shock me, though, if you need to go 100% if you want to get him, unless you think that your league doesn't pay attention to what's going on right now. Then you might be able to.
Obviously not.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know why that guy's dropping Keelan Cole, but I don't know if now everyone else is paying attention, and that's just the one guy in the league that just doesn't care. I have no idea.
Yeah, I was about to say, I would just, at that point, I would throw it all on there. The waiver wire, like you're hoping for a guy to.
You're not going to find a Jamar Chase.
Exactly.
You could. We could see another James Robinson, but we don't know that yet. We know what Jamar Chase has a role. They drafted him top 5.
He's gonna. I would throw it all on there.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. If you want him, I would say go 100%. And
you're gonna have to. Because you know someone else is gonna do the same thing and be like, "Oh my God, Jamar Chase," and just throw it all out there, and that's probably gonna be worth it.
Unless you have 10 other dudes like this guy in your league, somebody's going to throw it all out there.
Yep. Yeah. And we got one more question. So they just wanted our thoughts on Damian Harris. I don't think we brought him up in the running back sleepers. I think he was getting drafted too soon for us to consider him. But he's definitely one of those guys I think that
I think he's a value where he's at.
Yeah, I think he's around 7, 8, 9, depending on your format, somewhere in there. But yeah, I think he's being slept on. Not that we're talking about sleepers or anything like that.
His ADP will go down after what we saw from Ramondre Stevenson.
Yeah,
and people are going to hype him up. But we saw a Raiders running back. I don't remember his name last year, but he had like 4 carries, 97 yards, and 2 touchdowns. People went crazy. They thought he was going to supplant Josh Jacobs.
Yeah.
Don't sweat it. Damian Harris looked good last year in the opportunities he got. He was averaging like 12.6 carries per game and 66 point something yards. And it's just going to go up from there. And especially if we talk about the switch again with Mac Jones and Cam Newton. Cam Newton's going to take away some red zone looks for touchdown sakes, and that's why Damian Harris is lower than the rest of these guys, even though he gets the fair share of the work in New England. But if we see that switch from Cam Newton to Mac Jones, he's going to see more red zone touches and just more carries in general because he's not going to get any taken away or as many.
Yeah, no, for me,
Harris is at the back end of a range where you're like actually able to get a starting running back. Like him and Zach Moss, that's like the cutoff. Harris, he's going to have his role set. He looked good last year. Like you said, I'm not really worried about Sorny Michelle. He might be a cut candidate for all we know. Ramondre Stevenson, he did look good. Can't take that away. But it was against third stringers. Granted, he also had third stringers blocking for him. So take all of that with a grain of salt. But Harris does have more draft capital, has a year under Belichick's system. No Rex Burkhead.
PPR does kill Harris's value a little bit. Because
he does.
He has the pass catching ability, but when they go hurry up 2 minute, James White's going to be
will be out there.
So that's what kills it a little bit for a PPR standpoint. But he's still a starting running back that you're going to get. 8, 9. That's something that you want on your bench.
I'll wrap it up with this. I agree with all of that. That he's one of the latest starting running backs you can get up there with Zach Moss if he ends up being the starter. But I'd feel much more comfortable with Harris as my RB3 than my RB2 in my roster, unless I just went crazy with wide receivers and got a lot of studs or got a top tight end as well. And then as your RB2, I mean, you can make that work on your roster, but I would definitely feel way more comfortable as my RB3 or RB4.
Yeah. Like if you had a top pick and went like CMC or Dalvin, 1 or 2, then on that turn you took like it would probably be DK and Darren Waller, then hammered receiver again. So yeah, Harris would probably be in that RB2, RB3 range for your roster. And at that point, I'd be comfortable slating him in there because he's going to have a safe floor of 10 to 11 points a game. And that's really what you need when you have such high ceiling at every other position.
Yeah. So hopefully we helped I sell WC with our thoughts on Damian Harris. We'll find out if he ends up drafting him or not, or her. Any closing thoughts? We went a little long this episode, but I mean, there's so many tight ends to talk about this range. Any thoughts?
It was fun being on. I appreciate you having me on. Looking forward to chopping it up again and getting back at it next week.
Awesome. I was about to say, having you on, you're a part of the show now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Bringing me on. Yeah. That's a better way to put it.
Perfect. The only closing thoughts I have is Rojo to the moon. That's what I'm going to leave y'all with today.
Fair enough. And do you have anything to plug, Toby, for this week?
No.
Cool. How about you, Alex?
No, nothing additional.
Cool. I might have an article coming out later in the week for Fantasy and Frames with talking about how does Fab work for a lot of people that are new to fantasy football or don't really understand it and how to use it. So be on the lookout for that. And then we have a lot going on with Triple Play Fantasy. So for football this week, we have wide receiver ranking debates with Sam Wagman. Then we also have the Super FF Bros episode. And Danny Woodhead is coming back again for another interview. So that's awesome. Basketball is going to take a break this week. And then baseball is going to have an episode on older players producing with Fantasy Central. And then there's also an interview with Placido Polanco. So a lot going on, as always, with Triple Play Fantasy. So that's why it's important to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We just hit over 1,000 subscribers last week, so that's awesome. So we're trying to keep that train rolling, especially as we get into the season. Next week for us, we're going to be discussing FAB waivers, so your free agent acquisition budget. So what is that? How does it work? Why should your league do it? We'll be discussing all of that. And then, like I said, the best way to support us is to subscribe on all of different platforms and follow us on Twitter. So the show is at the Tripwire Pod. And then you can follow all of us on Twitter. All of our handles have been up on the screen. And with that, we're going to call it a night, and we'll see you guys next week.